What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome to the Word on Woodward. I hope you guys are all getting ready for a nice long Memorial Day weekend, and make sure you're liking, subscribing, and turning on your notifications so you don't ever miss a second of the Word on Woodward. We've got a jam-packed show today. We're going to hear from Red Wings prospect Giovanni Smith, Todd Radom, who's a very interesting interview. You guys are definitely going to want to hear that one. And we've got MLB Network's John Morosi joining us later in the show. And of course, Dan Dickerson will be here as well. Let's bring in Art Regner to join me. Art, the first question I have for you today is, will you be playing Hockey Town Trivia at 2 p.m.? Because today's theme is music, and I feel like you'd be really good at that.
Yes, I will be. I will be going under an assumed name, though, however. So I will win, and I already know it. I encourage everybody because it'll be a challenge to go up against me.
It will. You've always got a new record up behind you, and you guys can take part in this Hockey Town Trivia on the District Detroit mobile app starting at 2 p.m. today. Again, today's theme is music, and I already know that you guys are going to have some competition just between Art, and some of the guys on our production team are pretty excited to play too, because this is going to be a fun one.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is just not a record that's behind me today. This is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the revolutionary album by the Beatles. But I will tell you something. Years ago, I got in a car, and this is, 8-track tapes and stuff with a couple of buddies from high school. And, Sgt. Pepper's was on, and I said, wow, it's Sgt. Pepper's. And the guy got really incredulous with me, the gentleman who was driving, and said, it's the pepper. It's the pepper. Just call it the pepper. So the pepper is behind me, if you can see it there. So I'll never. I was like, hey, dude, back off. I mean, I never had heard that before, but yes, from now on we refer to it as the pepper. And he actually had a dog.
All right,
named
that's
Pepper,
noted.
So God only knows what was going on.
Well, guys, again, that's Hockey Town Trivia today at 2 p.m. just after we're done here on the Word on Woodward. And today's theme is music, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Art, what do you say we get into the big three presented by our friends at Chevy? We've got some really cool topics to talk about today. And of course, we're going to give you the most update that we can with the NHL here. One thing I really want to talk about is something that was interesting in an article posted on CBS Sports. They were talking about the complications that could be, I guess, present due to international travel, because as we know, there are some Canadian teams in the NHL, and there has been a no travel order that's been in place and extended through June. So if that does extend into July, when the NHL is targeting their return to play, what kind of problems could this cause for teams?
Well, yeah, it's really odd, because I know that the border is not going to be open. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada said through June 21st. Now, I know there's special exemptions. So the last figure that I had was 18% of all NHL players are back in Europe at that point. And that's a rather large amount of players. So I think trying to coordinate all of that and having them get here, I think it could be a little bit of a nightmare. But I think eventually, once the NHL decides this is our plan, this is what we're going to adopt, I think that, I would assume that hockey players would be essential travel. So no matter what, or essential workers. And, I think hockey players themselves aren't going to put themselves as a first responder or anything, but, obviously, they provide a service. I think that will be worked out. I really think it'll be worked out. It's interesting. It seems that this 2014 playoff thing is picking up some steam. They're going to have some play-in rounds and then the 16-team playoff. But one way or another, I think the NHL is working diligently along with the Players Association to try to figure something out. I think this travel could be a minor snafu, but I don't think it'll be prevent the restart of the season.
All right, I tend to agree with you there. And you mentioned the 2014 playoff that is actually picking up some traction here. And Pierre LeBrun tweeted earlier this morning that we could have some news on this as soon as today, that they may be meeting with the Players Association to see what they think about the tweaks that were made to this 2014 format. And, that's the really interesting thing about this, is that we don't know exactly how the players are feeling about this. So hopefully that we do have some news on this pretty soon here. Pierre LeBrun predicted today or tomorrow. So we could have something really big here in the next couple of days.
Right. I think if there's anything, there seems to be at least a concerted effort by both parties, players and owners, to try to resolve this and get something done. I do think this is something that, I've checked over and over again, and I know I'm jumping a little bit over here, but the NHL draft, that's up to Gary Bettman. He can decide when the draft is going to be. That's totally up to the commissioner. So I think once they resolve the start of this season, and when I keep referring to Justin Advocator, they're going to need at least 3 or 4 weeks to even get that going. I think you might have a draft in there too, even though they're still going to have a playoff thing. It's going to be interesting to see how it all comes down. But again, I do think that eventually the NHL is really going to try to get this season going. As I said earlier, I think the real thing is that the NBA and the NHL are in a really bad spot right here because their seasons were almost done, as opposed to Major League Baseball and football, who, and I know it was spring training in baseball, but they have a little more leeway because their seasons haven't started. The other two leagues need to decide a champion, and they want to decide a champion after playing virtually their entire schedule. So this is really an unprecedented time, as we said. And I find it fascinating to see how parties are working together to get to some sort of resolution.
Right. And Art, you mentioned that there is a little bit of a difference between the NBA and the NHL and the NFL and the MLB. But one thing that we can say is definitely in common. We saw some of the safety protocols that the MLB put out there for their players. That's going to be a huge concern for the NHL players as well.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think safety is first and foremost. They're a little bit different. They're a little bit different game. Let's put it that way. Obviously, hockey's a little more of a contact game. They sweat on each other. You can hit each other. There's fighting allowed. Baseball, the guys are complaining that they won't be able to spit or something, and I think it's a little bit different from that aspect. I think when you look at a contact game, as opposed to, and I'm not saying baseball isn't a physical, enduring sport, because it is, but I'm just saying that, there's a little precautions that need to be taken. And I really think the league, with testing and all that kind of stuff, as close as we seem to be, I do think we're probably not quite as close, because when push comes to shove, health and safety, and that's why, as we did on Tuesday's show, that's why I applaud Major League Baseball. They're thinking it through. I think that hockey is going to have to think it through a little bit more, just because of the nature of their game.
And are talking about player safety and MLB safety, that leads us right into our second topic. Ron Gardenhire was part of a Tigers virtual happy hour on Tuesday night. And this is actually really cool because he talks about what the players think about these protocols and everything. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
What are you hearing from the players about the safety issue? I know the money thing is going to take care of itself one way or the other, but the safety issue, there's a lot of things that were thrown out in that offer. What are you hearing from players about some of the protocol for the?
Well, there's a lot of concerns, and by no means is it written in stone what they put out there. I think what they're looking for is solutions or better possibilities, better things that can happen. I think they want input, and that's what the commissioners tried to do, is get as much input as he can with his group, and that's what they're working on right now. It's input about what's going to happen.
Art, I think the interesting thing about this is really too that we admittedly we sometimes forget that these athletes are humans too, and they're dealing with this pandemic just like we are. So they want to make sure that when they're putting themselves out there, that they're safe too.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I really like what Jack Morris said, because, he said, listen, the labor or the money issue, the financial thing is going to get settled, because, big dogs have to eat. So, eventually they're going to figure something out. Baseball players want to get paid. So, and I'm sure that is actually a minor issue in all of this. I think safety will be first and foremost. And I really think once they start wanting to play, I think then you're going to get significant others and family members and everybody involved and really study this plan. And, before they let, someone walk out the door, whomever, a player, they're going to want to make sure that they're being tested. Everyone is cared for. This is a major thing. This is the major hurdle to get back to playing. is the health and safety of not only the players, everyone involved, including me and you, Daniela. If the Red Wings come back and
Right.
we end up covering their games, and eventually next year we will. I mean, the season will be back.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that there's provisions for me and you and everybody, all the workers, players, and everybody, that there is a plan in place that is the most effective. There's no, fail-safe plan here or anything like that. I mean, there might be a little bit of a risk involved, but I really think that this is really, really important. And you could see Gardy talking there and really saying, yeah, we're taking this seriously. And your point is very well taken. If I heard an athlete say it once, I've heard him say it a million times. We're just people. Yeah. I'm just a guy. I play a sport, but I'm just a guy. And again, it's quite an extraordinary period we're living in, and I'm really eager to see how this all plays out.
I think a lot of people are eager to see how it plays out, Art, but one thing we can assure you is that all of the leagues are working diligently to make sure that they're putting everybody's safety first. So as we get updates there, of course, we will bring them to you. Now, we're going to have a little fun with our third topic here. The Athletic released an article that talks about the top 10 most dominant sports team in Detroit history. Now, some of the teams that made that list were the 84 Tigers, and they did the 95 through 98 Red Wings. So they covered a few years with that one. The 01-02 Red Wings, and in the honorable mention list, we had the 07-08 Red Wings and 87 and 06 Tigers. Now, again, this includes the Pistons were on there a couple of times, and we had some Michigan football, and we had some Michigan State football
Definitely.
And basketball and that kind of stuff. But for the teams that you saw there are from the Red Wings and Tigers, is there anything that sticks out to you where you're kind of like, you disagree with that?
Well, I do think it's a bit of a cop-out going 95 through 98, just because you have two Stanley Cup champions in there, and then the 96 team, set the record for most victories at 62, which Tampa eventually tied, and they were second all-time in points, I think, at 131 points. But I look at it this way. I think the best team from 1970 on was the 84 Tigers. 35-5 start, the best in baseball history. They led wire to wire. And then I would also say, as much as I love, the 95 through 98 Red Wings, the best team by far was the 2002 Red Wings. That is never going to be duplicated again in hockey and maybe in all of professional sports with the way we have hard caps and things go like that. I know baseball doesn't have a cap. That team with 9 or 10 Hall of Famers on it, what they were able to do. The way they fall behind 2 games to Vancouver and then come back and crush them. And I also want to say something, jumping back to the 84 Tigers. They start off 35-5. Toronto was on their heels the whole time. But once the playoffs started, they were 7-1, I believe. They only lost 1 game. So when it was time to get down to business, that team definitely performed very, very well. And, and it was really the first time, there's Gibby in that home run. Now, that was the first time that guys like Kirk Gibson, who grew up in Detroit, the 68 Tigers were really the team. Those guys were still all around, Al Kaline, Willie Horton, Norm Cash, all of them. And, for these guys to duplicate, going back and reliving kind of 68 and then doing it on their own and putting such a huge stamp on it by like 35-5 start, 7-1 in the playoffs, that was absolutely tremendous. But the 2002 Red Wings, perhaps the greatest team in NHL history. Single season team. I would put that line up against virtually everybody, to be honest with you. That team, Hasek and net, I'm telling you right now, Nick on the blue line, Steve Shanny, Sergey, I can go on. I can name off the whole roster, obviously. There's 9 or 10 Hall of Famers on it. And then Scotty behind the bench does not get much better than that.
It doesn't, Art, and I know you and I could go on about this forever and ever, but we've actually got some breaking news that we need to get to on the Tigers front. But first, a big thank you to our friends at Chevy. Chevy cares. That is why Chevy Clean dealers are committed to using enhanced vehicle cleaning measures with CDC-approved cleansers before delivering your vehicle, after purchase or service. So when you're ready, you can find new roads with confidence. Now, let's get into Brush Street Beat, because as I said, we've got some breaking news thanks to our friends at McLaren for bringing us the Brush Street Beat this week and every week. And Art, Miguel Cabrera making one of the biggest donations to help fight COVID-19 and the devastation here in Detroit. He has donated $250,000. How amazing is that?
Well, it's incredible, from everything that I've been able to, gather. I think that's one of the largest contributions anyone has made as a baseball player, and one of the largest single contributions made to the city of Detroit. Well, what can you say? Miggy, he's one of the greatest hitters, perhaps the greatest hitter of his generation. For him to give back to this community and let Detroit know, hey, I'm with you, I'm here. I mean, the money is going to go to, to kids and to the city. I just think it's absolutely tremendous.
It really is. And Miguel Cabrera also gave a message himself, and he said here, during these very tough times for all, and my wife, Rosenhal, and they all wanted to step up and help the Detroit community in any way that they could. And, this is amazing. This is going to benefit children all throughout Detroit. This is going to help the Boys and Girls Club of Southeast Michigan, Detroit Public Schools, and the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And I think that is the area that really needs the most help. We need to make sure that these kids are okay, and that the schools that they're going to be able to get back to school in the fall, and make sure that they're getting fed and everything like that. So Miguel Cabrera, huge shout out to him.
Without question. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, anything that really helps children right now, and you just have to tip your cap to them. As you said, meals for families, child care. Some of this money is going to go for masks, which are vitally important at this time. I mean, you're wearing a mask to protect your fellow human being. And kids need to be protected too, and they should have masks on as well until we can get through this. So again, Miguel Cabrera, who you could tell, I'm not surprised by this. Are you, Daniela? I mean, here's a guy who's playful. He loves the game. He's always joking around. I mean, he probably really wanted to make an impact and do something. I think he took his time. He kind of let this play out a little bit, saw what people were doing, what was really needed, and then he comes in with an influx of, $250,000 is a lot of money, and decided, I'm giving it to the old English D, so to speak. I'm giving it to the city of Detroit. I want to help families. I want to help children. Absolutely great. Absolutely great.
Yeah. And Art, to answer your question, this is no surprise. You knew Miguel Cabrera was going to do something. And like you said, I think he just wanted to do something that would be the most impactful. So he waited a little bit and kind of saw what everyone else was doing and saw the areas of need. And he did a fantastic job. It was also no surprise to Chris Ilitch as well. He was, just saying that Miguel Cabrera is so great. And he exactly said this generous donation further cements Miguel Cabrera's legacy as an all-time great, both on the field and in the community, and all of us with the Tigers. And Ilitch Charities are thankful for his and Rosenhal's contribution to Detroit families and children in need. In addition to today's donation and partnership with the Detroit Tigers Foundation, we recognize the Cabrera family for years of awarding annual scholarships, renovating baseball fields, and hosting special fundraising events that positively impact thousands. Thank you, Miguel and Rosenhal. The Cabrera family, like we said, Art, it's just amazing what he's doing. Great recognition there from Chris Ilitch. Just a great thing here. And as we all try to battle through the end of this pandemic and get back to normal, it's just really, really heartwarming to see Miguel Cabrera giving back.
Well, it certainly is. And, and it kind of goes in full with everything. I mean, obviously, we work we work for Chris Ilitch, but I think that, in our very own situation, I mean, the Tigers and the Red Wings and, the Ilitch organization were one of the first, there are no layoffs, giving back to the community. I mean, they've done a lot themselves to ensure and try to make this easy on everybody. $1 million fund for workers, and at Little Caesars and Comerica, and this is a bad time. I think we all know that, but I think with the way Chris Ilitch has stepped up in the Ilitch organization, and Miguel Cabrera and certain players. How many Red Wings have we had on? How many Tigers have we had on that are all doing something? And I just think that goes to show you that when times are tough, we all band together, we all become one. And, and I tip my cap to everyone who really is in a position to help. And I think that's the key. They're in a position to help and make a difference. Mm-hmm. And they are. And, that is what being a human being in my book is all about. It's not all the accolades that you can get and how much money you have and all that kind of stuff. If you're in a position to help somebody, you should help them. And that's exactly what's going on here. It doesn't get any better than that.
It really doesn't, Art. And now we're going to go to Carly Johnston, who's standing by with a couple of the recipients of Miguel Cabrera's donations.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Alicia Merriweather, the Deputy Superintendent of DPSCD, and Robert Jamerson, the CEO of Detroit PAL, recipients of the Cabrera's donation. First, I want to ask Alicia a couple questions, then we'll get to Robert. How's it going, you guys?
It's going well. It's going well. Great day.
In the midst of a lot of challenges, it's going well.
Absolutely understand. And Alicia, the donation from Rose Angel and Miguel will help provide both meals and technology for students in DPS. Why is that so important during this COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I mean, obviously with food access, and certainly in a situation where students and families have a great deal of challenges, really supporting the food distribution is critically important. So when we think about basic needs, especially during the pandemic, food is at the top of the list. So the district has been distributing about 125,000 meals per week. This donation helps us be able to keep those distribution centers going. So while we receive reimbursement from the federal government for food and the preparation for food, the labor, we do not receive reimbursement for security and the other elements that are required to run the sites. So this donation is going towards making sure those sites can operate. So that's for the food. It's extremely important. I think that's a pretty obvious one. The technology piece maybe is not as obvious, but I think most people are familiar with the digital divide. And the fact of the matter is that during this COVID crisis, many of us are working remotely. In fact, this interview is remotely. Normally we would come somewhere and we'd be together. We're doing this electronically. Each of us have equipment to be able to do this. I think all of us would agree, if you're watching this, seeing people being able to interact in this way is much more dynamic than a paper packet. And basically the district, as we've transitioned through the COVID closure, we have been distributing paper packets to students with coursework. What we want to do is be able to allow students to be able to log on electronically. And so the other part of the donation is going to the Connected Futures Project, which aims to give 51,000 devices, 6 months of internet, and technical support. So it's a game changer. Not to play on words, we're talking about tigers, but it is a game changer, not just for this COVID closure, but afterwards. So our deepest gratitude for this gift. It's just extremely helpful.
That's incredible. And what does it mean to you and to the school district to have a hometown team like the Detroit Tigers and an athlete like Miguel Cabrera to provide the support?
It means everything. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if your hometown team doesn't support the other hometown teams, such as PAL, Detroit PAL, and Detroit Public Schools Community District, I don't know what that says about a community. So to me, the fact that the Detroit Tigers, Miguel Cabrera, and others have contributed to the district and other organizations during this crisis, it says everything that needs to be said. Detroit is known for our grit, our resilience. We're known for being able to persevere, but we also should be known for community. And really, to me, this gift and many others exemplify the fact that none of us are in this alone. And it also emphasizes that our sports teams are not just only focused on winning games, they're focused on moving the city forward. And so it really means a lot.
Awesome. Okay, now, Robert, I'm going to pivot to you. The donation will fund a collaborative effort between Detroit PAL, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeast Michigan, and Brilliant Detroit to provide affordable childcare during this crisis. Why are collaborations so important at this time?
Collaborations are important because when you start thinking about resources and you start thinking about who can best make those resources available and create awareness for those resources, you need grassroots organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, Detroit PAL, and Brilliant Detroit. When we come together, we're truly at our best. So for instance, Detroit PAL may be just known for sports, but our goal is to redirect them to the youth enrichment programs that the Boys and Girls Club offers, as well as the literacy programs that Brilliant Detroit offers. We ensure when we come together that no one is left behind, that all of the resources that come out are used and used effectively and efficiently. So collaboration is what makes us great. It causes us to come together during times like this instead of separating. We already have these relationships, and it's now bringing it all together. So it's truly great for them to understand the importance of giving dollars out, as well as who to give those dollars to make it impactful.
That's incredible. And the Detroit Tigers and Detroit Tigers Foundation have a long-standing history of support with Detroit PAL. What does it mean to the PAL community to have this type of partnership and support from a star player like Miguel?
I mean, when you think about if we weren't getting the support from the Detroit Tigers, Tigers Foundation, and players like Miguel, we wouldn't exist. I mean, over the years, truly, they've been supportive to help many youth find their greatness, which is our mission. And so when you start thinking about without dollars, there's no mission. And truly, we struggle all the time trying to figure out how do we close the gap when it comes to socioeconomics, education, and health and wellness. We are so much more than sports, and it takes organizations and people like Miguel to reach beyond what they're dealing with, because truly everybody's dealing with something during these difficult times, and to be able to see the needs and understand the needs of others. So we truly are thankful for them continuing to understand the importance of us coming together. And I think, we mentioned earlier that we are in Detroit. And when you think about the Detroit Tigers, they represent Detroit. We all represent Detroit. We are resilient. And this is just a great time and a great example of what can happen when we come together.
I love that, the silver lining. Okay, now this next question is for both of you, but Alicia, we'll start with you. If you were to thank the Cabreras for this contribution on behalf of the thousands of children that you serve, what would you say?
Ooh, it's hard to encapsulate 51,000 voices. That's a lot of pressure. I think would say sincere gratitude to you for seeing the bigger picture. And honestly, with 51,000 students, there's 51,000 stories, and each of them are unique. And if you took the time to hear each family story, each student's story, it would take forever. But there is a story behind every single student who's being impacted. So the briefest way I can say is thank you. And I really, really appreciate it. On behalf of Detroit Public Schools Community District and all the voices, the best I can do is thank you.
Robert, how about you?
It is overwhelming. I say when I think about it, I was a PAL kid, and I've come back to be able to take over the organization that helped me to get to where I'm at. And I always think about, who is the community missing? Who has a need that's being unmet? And so I truly am thankful for him, his wife, the Detroit Tigers Foundation, and the Tigers for having, once again, empathy, for understanding the needs. Sometimes people don't realize that everyone, no matter what income bracket you're in, no matter what religion or race, you are still dealing with uncertainty and challenging times. And so to be able to go past your own needs and then to be able to give to others during this time is just, for me, is heartfelt and truly means a lot. And so I would just say thank you. Truly know that these dollars are going to be well used, and you're going to impact someone's life, someone who just needs to know that they are cared for, that they are loved, and that they are appreciated to have the same types of opportunities as everyone else. So truly, thank you on behalf of Detroit PAL, the Boys and Girls Club, Brilliant Detroit, and the greater Detroit community. So thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Robert and Alicia, for speaking with me today. I cannot wait to see the impact this donation has on DPSCD and Detroit PAL. Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you and yours stay well during this time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thanks. Now back to you guys.
Detroit PAL, Detroit Public Schools, and you heard Alicia, 51,000 kids that will be impacted by Miguel Cabrera's donation. And, you know, each of them impacted in their own way. It's got to be such a bright light for these kids during such a difficult time, and the families as well.
Right. I mean, you know, we were all little kids once, right? And I mean, when you hear that a Detroit Tiger, and not just a Detroit Tiger, Miguel Cabrera and his family think so much of you and care so deeply about you that they want to make sure that you have food, you have a mask, you know, you're getting proper health care. I mean, that is just absolutely fantastic. And, you know, I think that all 51,000, and then don't forget the kids in PAL and the Police Athletic League there, you know, just to know that, you know, I have a ball glove or whatever, you know, my field is clean today, or, you know, because of Miguel Cabrera, my gosh, you're going to go out there and pretend that you're Miguel Cabrera. You know, you're going to go out there and play or eat, or, you know, it's going to make you feel good about yourself, give you a little bit of self-esteem to go out and try to accomplish anything that you want to in this world, because somebody like Miguel Cabrera, who's accomplished so much in his lifetime, thinks enough of you to go out and give $250,000, which again is a lot of money to benefit our community. You know, I'm getting choked up a little bit. I really am, because that's what being a good citizen, that's what being a human being is all about. The more you help people, the better you feel about yourself.
Very well said, Art. And if anybody didn't idolize Miguel Cabrera as it was, all the more reason to respect him, to idolize him. What an honor to have him as a Detroit Tiger and in the city of Detroit. So thank you, Miguel Cabrera. And a big thank you to our friends at McLaren for bringing us Brush Street Beat this week and every week right here on the Word on Woodward. Guys, we've still got a lot coming up for you, including interviews with Giovanni Smith. Dan Dickerson is going to join us. And later, we're going to be joined by MLB Network's John Morosi. So we've got a lot going on, but it's time to learn a thing or two, you guys. Carly Johnston caught up with somebody very interesting earlier this week. So I'm going to let her take it away, and we're going to catch up with Carly.
Thanks, Daniela. What's up? It's time for Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Today, I'm joined by graphic designer Todd Radom. Todd, for people who don't know, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I am a designer. I have created logos, uniforms, for sports events and for teams for the last 30 years. Everything from the Super Bowl to individual teams, ticket designs. I'm also an author and a writer.
That's incredible. Long list. You got a good resume, and you're an admitted history fan as well. Can you give us a little history lesson on our classic Old English D and the winged wheel?
I would love to. These are two time-honored teams that have evolved a little bit over the years. As far as the Old English D is concerned, I love so much about it. I'm an East Coast guy, but I remember going to Tiger Stadium. I actually did the logo for the final season of Tiger Stadium in 1999. My goodness, last millennium. But the Tigers D, to me, connects the entire history of the franchise up to today. It predates the Tigers' time in the American League, back to 1896, when the Tigers were members of the minor league Western League. So that's a pretty amazing thing. It has evolved over the years. It's disappeared time and here and there, but it endures, much like Detroit itself. And the winged wheel is much the same. Almost 90 years of continual use. The Red Wings today look like the Red Wings of Gordie Howe, the Red Wings of the 90s. You can draw a straight line throughout their history, which is a pretty unusual thing.
Love it. And can I ask, what got you into this career path?
Wow. It's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I am a fourth generation artist. My father was a what I call a creative jack of all trades, was at various times a designer, a photographer, a copywriter, art director. His father, my grandfather, was an illustrator and fine artist. I have a brother who's a photographer. I have a cousin who's a jazz drummer. So the DNA runs deep. And I'm one of those kids that, I played sports, but I was never great at it. But I think because of that DNA, I always looked at a certain way. I observed the uniforms. I observed what was going on in the field, certainly. But I was looking at the logos and I was doodling logos. And all these years later, I'm involved in sports in kind of a different way.
That's awesome. And not only are you a graphic designer, but as you said before, you're an author. You have a book out called Winning Ugly, A Visual History of the Most Bizarre Baseball Uniforms Ever Worn. What made you want to write a book, and what can readers expect in it?
Well, I am a child of the 70s, and we had our share of flamboyant uniforms, different uniforms, experimental stuff going on in the 70s across sports, but baseball really, rose to the fore. You've got the Astros with their rainbow uniforms, the Padres in brown and gold, the Oakland Athletics winning 3 World Series titles in green and gold, the Cleveland Indians looking like giant Bloody Marys at one time. So this is a really loving homage to that era, but it's a history of the baseball uniform, goes right up to the present time. There's a little bit of Tigers in there. Of course, they've looked like the Tigers, like I said, by and large for almost their entire history. But really, like I said, more than anything, a loving homage to some of the most questionable uniforms ever worn.
So you touched on the Tigers. What are those Tigers references in that book?
As much as anything, I talk about the fact that the Tigers went off-brand a couple of times in their history. In 1960, the Tigers dropped the Old English D. There was a lot of hue and cry. They went with a script Tigers, one of the very few times in their entire lifespan that they have worn the team name across the front of the uniform. Well, that was dropped. The D was restored after 1 year. I also talk about a seldom remembered single game back in the mid-1990s when the Tigers wore a navy blue alternate jersey. It was supposed to be paired, believe it or not, Carly, with pinstriped pants. They wore white pants that day, but it wasn't so bad looking necessarily. But again, very off-brand for that ball club. It was mothballed after a single game, never to be seen again. And the Tigers still look like the Tigers despite that little experiment.
I love it. It's really interesting to see the progression. And speaking of Tigers, you created the 2018 Detroit Tigers season tickets. What was your vision behind creating those?
Well, again, an outsider here, but I know how special that ball club, that championship was to that city, how the players on that team at a time of great difficulty in America and in Detroit really brought the entire region together. I had a lot of help. My buddy Ron Wade, who was the marketing guy at the Tigers, pulled together a bunch of stuff. So looking at that and expanding upon it, I really explored the 68 Tigers, their players, their great moments, the World Series via illustration, typography, photography, and custom design. It was a really great project.
Very cool. And coming up in October of this year will be the release of your new book, Fabric of the Game, the stories behind the NHL's names, logos, and uniforms. What are some things you've touched on related to the Red Wings in that book?
So this is a book I've written with my friend Chris Creamer of sportslogos.net. And we look at every team in the history of the National Hockey League, including the Montreal Wanderers, who played a handful of games in the NHL's first season. Their arena burned down. They went out of business. But we looked at the Red Wings, and it was interesting, Carly, because, there's on the one hand, there's not a lot to write about the Red Wings. Like I keep saying, they've looked the same for almost 90 years here. Mm-hmm. But we did look at the Detroit Cougars. This was the first iteration, the first name that the what we now call the Red Wings had. They were formed in 1926. They wore red and white uniforms those first couple of years. They then become the Detroit Falcons. And then in 1932, James Norris buys the franchise almost out of bankruptcy. He is the man behind the Red Wings logo, the winged wheel. He was a defenseman as a young man in Montreal back in the late 1890s. One of the teams that he competed against was the Montreal AAA, Amateur Athletic Association Winged Wheelers. And he was inspired by their logo, a winged wheel. He redrew it, tilted it on its side. Our logo endures.
That's incredible to learn the history of the logos. And now I have to ask, how important is a logo and a jersey to a sports team?
Well, you're talking to someone who thinks it's everything. And I always say that there are some teams that can tear things down, burn it down, start from scratch. There are some teams that really have to paint around the edges. When we talk about the Tigers and the Red Wings, these are two perfect examples of deep histories, fan bases that really embrace the old looks. It might not be the case, Carly, for younger teams. I'm thinking of the Jacksonville Jaguars might redo their uniforms every once in a while. A team like the Tampa Bay Rays, they've had several distinct looks in their 20-some-odd year history. But it depends on what the team is. There's so much equity. Our sports logos and uniforms connect generations. They are all about memories. Memories are currency. And I always say that our logos and uniforms, they connect fans in a way that, we're part of a tribe. And to be part of that tribe means that we gravitate toward these looks. Sometimes we hate them. Sometimes we want them redone, but we do care about them.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. And you've also done artwork for things like the Super Bowl, the Big Three tournament, NBA and MLB All-Star games. Where does your inspiration come from? And are you usually given free rein to be creative?
It's a good question. I think every job is different. And I think that it really stems from the fact that I'm a fan and a consumer. And, let's face it, having this knowledge, having this interest in history. I always say I'm a history geek of all kinds, but sports history has really been something that I've gravitated towards since I was a kid. It gives me a little bit of a leg up. I love doing the research. Before, quote unquote, pen hits paper, doing that research, getting under the hood, seeing what makes a particular fan base tick. That's really job one.
That's awesome. And what do you think will be the next big trend in sports design?
I think it's about more. More is more. All of our attention spans are just so diminished. We have our faces and our screens, and that has really changed the way that we look at the world and the way we look at sports, of course. I think that it's really interesting. Over the last 5-10 years, our colors keep getting brighter. And I think that's a direct result of, again, all of us having our heads in our screens, of the in-arena and in-stadium experience, which this. It's all about LED lights. Those things are really, really bright, makes us look at things in a different way. And lastly, as far as the more part is concerned, look at the NBA. The last couple of years, you're seeing teams that are wearing, there really is no particular designation between home and road uniforms. Every team has multiple sets that they really swap in and out of. And I think that reflects our attention spans as well. So more is the watchword.
Got it. And what has been your favorite project to work on so far?
Oh, my goodness. I got a lot of them. Certainly having the Super Bowl under my belt is something that means that I'm part of the biggest one-day sporting event on the face of the earth. Otherwise, I'm a baseball fan, having been working with my friends at Major League Baseball for 30 years. A lot of memorable stuff there. And you referenced it earlier. I've worked with Ice Cube the last 4 years on the look of the Big Three, 3-on-3 professional basketball league. That's been a really interesting collaboration, probably the most tight collaboration that I've had in over the course of my career. It's me and him. We kind of mix it up, chop it up. He studied architectural drafting as a young man, so he really gets it. And it's been a really fun collaboration.
That's amazing. Fun fact. Thanks for that. Well, this has been incredible to get to talk to you, and I really appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure.
Carly, thank you so much. Looking forward to better times together in stadium, in arena, and I'll be out there in Detroit. Thanks so much.
Love it. Thank you so much, Todd. Can't wait to link up when this is all done. And thanks for tuning in to Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Daniela?
Thank you so much, Carly. What a cool job that Todd has. And call me crazy, I kind of like the colors of the 70s. Maybe we should bring some of those back. But we're going to bring on another guest, guys. It's time for our mailbag delivered to you by Little Caesars. Our guest for today is Dan Dickerson. Hey, Dan, what do you think about those 70s uniforms? Do you think maybe we should get one, a throwback jersey, some sort, add some colors to it?
I think the 70s is funny. We were watching a movie yesterday from the 70s. I said to my son, this is some of the worst fashion color patterns. I did not like 70s design. He said, I think it's pretty cool. So there clearly might be a market for it, but not in my book. I didn't like the fashion of the 70s at all.
Art, you were shaking your head. Are you on Dan's side in this one?
Well, there were some questionable things. The Tigers then went to, I think that's when they first, or one of the first times I can remember, they actually had another color besides blue and white to their uniform with the band, the orange band, which didn't look too bad. I really think the Houston Astros uniform back then were definitely softball-like. Until, what was it, J.R. Richard, until he started throwing the ball. And then he, it was like, okay, dude, you can wear that uniform if you want. I mean, he was just such a dominant and just physical specimen. But, it was weird. But by far the worst uniform, I think, back then was the Padres. Just something about putting that brown and yellow combination again. Yeah, the Padres, I mean, that was just not, and they've changed their colors since. But the thing I like about Detroit, and I know Double D will get into this, is that except for when the Pistons went to not teal, but Pistons green, and then that whole combination, Detroit's teams, the Red Wings have always worn red and white. Always wore as long as Detroit's been playing hockey. The Tigers, as you said, they had the piping, the Old English D for most of the time. And the Lions have been Honolulu blue and silver. I think there are a couple of times where they experimented with red, and then they put bubbles on the side of their helmet, their lion, in the 60s or something. But for the most part, this has been a very traditional market as far as uniforms go. And I really think that's what makes Detroit unique. I don't want the Red Wings to ever adopt a third jersey ever. I think red and white is the way to go. Their logo does not get any better than that. The Red Wing logo, the Old English D, that's perfection in my book. The Pistons, even though it's just a basketball, it says Detroit Pistons. It's essentially their logo. I think it's brilliant in its simplicity. And then I like the Lions. I like the the Honolulu blue and gray bars with the lion, the majestic lion in front. So when it comes to uniforms, I can complain a lot about the teams, I think, but when it comes to uniforms and tradition, it doesn't really get much better than Detroit.
But
I was just going to say, I think the moral of that whole story. Go ahead, Dan.
Daniela.
Sorry about that.
Like I said, you heard our last guest. More is better. So I think we got to that Red Wings sweater. We've got to add some 70s burnt orange and that wonderful yellow that the Padres used to work into their uniforms. Come on, that just highlight that red and white.
That would be such a slap in the face to every player that's ever worn that jersey if the Red Wings came out with, chartreuse and orange for a day. It's Citrus Day here in Detroit for some odd reason, and we're gonna wear chartreuse green and orange. How do you like that? Now the kids may buy it; it may fly off the shelf, and if that gets all of us raises or something, then I'm all for it. But, aside from that, I'm being selfish here. No way, man. Keep the uniforms as they are.
Oh, that's good.
Dan, before we get into our fan questions, I do want to ask you, I'm sure that you've heard Miguel Cabrera made a huge donation to benefit Detroit and COVID-19 relief. What was your reaction to that?
It's what you love to see. I can't really express it much better than you guys did earlier, and especially Art. But just this time that we have to be thinking of others who are in need. Just from my own personal experience, I've been volunteering with a terrific group, and I'm just somebody on the fringes of the volunteer effort called Variety Feeds Kids, and they've been delivering meals to kids in Pontiac elementary schools. And you realize, just the little time I've been involved, the tremendous need there is. That need does not go away during the summer. It increases during a pandemic. And for him to do what he did, is the numbers are astounding. How many people that can help. It warms your heart, and I think we've seen a lot of that. This, in many ways, is bringing out the best in a lot of people.
We really have, Dan. Very proud of the athletes that represent all of our Detroit sports teams. It has been great so far. And Miguel Cabrera, nothing short of amazing. Again, great donation. Thank you, Miguel Cabrera. Now, Dan, I've got a baseball question for you to answer. This is Sean from Waterford, and he asks, who has the best pitch in the Tigers starting rotation?
Wow.
I think you have to go with, first and foremost, because of the work he's put into it and the results he's gotten with it, Matt Boyd's slider. I don't think there's any question about this, because he's gone from taking that pitch and using it maybe 1 out of every 10 pitches to 1 out of every 3 in the last 2 years. And he's worked very hard on pitch design, the shape of the pitch, using, techniques he learned at drive line out in Seattle. And it's just impressive. It's a swing and miss pitch. Look at what his strikeout rate did last year. His swing and miss rate jumped, and it's because of this pitch. Lefties, righties, it doesn't matter. And I think that's easily the best pitch in the Tigers' rotation. When I was asked this question, it made me also think of, what's another one to watch. I think Spencer Turnbull's fastball is unique in its spin, and there have been some good stories written on this, but it's got movement, natural cutting action, which is into a lefty and away from a righty at 95 plus sometimes. And he doesn't even know which way it's going sometimes. But the spin is unique. It's got that football spiral spin at times. And that could be, it already is a great pitch. But the more he advances as a pitcher, that pitch is going to be a swing and miss, consistent swing and miss pitch, I think, throughout his career. It's absolutely a pitch to watch.
Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit here. On Tuesday, we had Jason Beck join us, and he's writing a series of articles that give the top 5 in each position in Tigers history. And he's starting to work on pitchers. I got to get your opinion. Who is the top Tigers pitcher of all time?
Oh, man. Of all time? Wow. Well, really, two of the pitchers they've had in the last 10 years.
Give me a couple that would make that list.
Well, Verlander and Scherzer absolutely make that list. Mickey Lolich makes that list. Denny McClain does not, just because his career was basically done by the time he was 25 years old. He had one of the greatest seasons ever. Certainly Hal Newhouser. I think the thing about Hal Newhouser is they said, look at it, he put up great numbers during World War II when there were so many regulars missing, but look what he did when they all came back the next year. He was equally as good. Hal Newhouser was a great pitcher for the Tigers. That's off the top of my head, and you can go back a little bit more. But I think the thing about Mickey Lolich, I've never felt like he was probably Hall of Fame. I know there's been that argument made, material, and yet the durability, the strikeouts, the consistency. That many strikeouts, it's still one of the highest totals for a lefty in history, 370 innings one year. He's special, and he belongs in that top 5.
I agree with you there, Dan. Just had to get your opinion on that. Very interesting stuff that Jason Beck is doing. So check those out at MLB.com if you get a chance. Art, this next question is for you. And I've got to tell you that I've been really excited to hear your answer to this one. Jeff Blashill recently gave a high school commencement speech. What would your speech be about? And that's from Kathy from Grosse Pointe. And what perfect timing for this. A lot of the high school seniors would have been having their last day of school this week or last week, and we know they're all celebrating in a different way than they normally would. But Art, if you were to give them a commencement speech right now, what would it be about?
Well, I think I'm kind of still caught up in the Miguel Cabrera, donation here.
Yeah.
I would tell them to help other people, and I would give them this story. I went in for a job interview, my first job interview to break into Detroit radio, which for me, and I know Double D can appreciate this, if you're a kid from Michigan, you're from Detroit, I worked in some small markets and all that, and I really wanted to, small markets, Howell, and then Ann Arbor, and then Detroit. So I think I was pretty fortunate, but I went in, and still my friend today, Joan Cherry Isabella, I was going to WXYT, where I eventually ended up being Denny McClain's producer, morning show producer. And, Denny's got a story of why his career flamed out at 25. I will not get into that. But what I will say is that she asked me, she said, what is the greatest thing you've ever done in your life? And I figured I'm thinking to myself, if I tell her what I think the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, I'm never going to get this job. So I looked at her, I looked Joan in the face, and I said to her, I said, do you really, really want to know what the greatest thing I've ever done in my life? You really, really want to know that? And she said, yeah. And I figured, I'm going to go for the moon. And this is the honest to God's truth. I said, passing out bread in a food line in Harlem, because I did that. I absolutely did that. That has stayed with me my entire life. And I was a younger man. I was, in my 20s at that point. And the reason why it stayed with me, because the look on these, for lack of a better term, downtrodden people, when you gave them food, when you gave them a meal, it doesn't get better than that. They're overwhelmed with emotion. They want to keep thanking you. And I kept saying, hey, don't thank me. No thanks necessary, because it made me, I was almost embarrassed that they were so in need and overwhelmed. I mean, it really hit home with me. So I guess I would start with that story. By the way, I got the job. Joan looked at me and said, great answer. And I figured, whoa. I go, well, then my father asked me, he goes, well, Arthur, how did it go? And I said, well, if it was up to the woman I just talked, I think I nailed it just based on that question. But going in, I was apprehensive to even say that. But I can tell you the honest to God's truth. And I would say this to every graduate out there today, especially in the times that you're going through. Sure, you're disappointed that you can't graduate and you haven't, they haven't called your name in pomp and circumstance, da, 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 all that music. You can't go through any of that. And you know what? And that's bad. I feel bad for you. My heart goes out to you. But the big picture, again, if you can do something, and I don't want to say exactly how old I am, but that was many, many, almost decades ago when I did that. I think about that almost every single day because it was just so uplifting, and to do something and to help your fellow man, to make an impact on somebody's life in a positive way. Again, it just doesn't get better than that. So that's what I would say.
Well, I really hope that we had some 2020 grads listening to that, Art, because I think you just gave a great commencement speech. Bravo.
Thank you. I like to screw around too much. So, but sometimes I do get serious and I get thoughtful. It's very rare. So, keep this one on your video recorder or something and play it back because it may never happen again.
Yeah. Dan, we've got a really cool third question for you, and there's a video for you to watch before you answer. So what do you think of these future broadcasters?
The 1-0 swing and a high fly ball.
It's way back. It's deep.
Deep. Left field. It's out of there. And it's gone. It's gone.
Gone deep in the rotation.
The next stop is the World Series. The Tigers are going to the World Series.
Tigers are going to the World Series.
Tigers going to the World Series.
It's a 3-1 walk-off home run.
The Tigers are going to the World Series.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Hey, I teach a short course in play-by-play up at Michigan State every year, and I always say, do you like sports? Yes. Bring the passion. Let it show. Let it show that you're happy to be there. That's what I see in that video. There's passion there. That's the starting point. That's all I need to see.
That's amazing. It's so cool, those kids getting involved in it. And they did a really good job. None of them were camera shy or anything. They were all on it.
No, they weren't. They were not at all. I love it. That's really a cute idea.
They might be coming for your job one day, Dan. You better be careful.
That's fine. Welcome to the booth.
All right, guys, let's move on to question number 4. Art, I'm going to have you answer this one first, and then Dan, you're going to follow with your answer. But Fred from Northville asked, with Memorial Day coming up, this is a huge debate, you guys. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Art, go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that Double D's call on that home run is one of the best in Tigers history. Tigers going to the World Series because he brought everything. He brought the passion. You could feel it in his voice. It's one of my all-time favorite calls. That's why he ranks right up there with Ken Cal as my all-time favorite announcer. With that said, I've actually thought about this. A hot dog is not a sandwich. It's a hot dog. And it's its own unique place in American culture. You can say, well, wait, it's a bun, but it's not symmetrical, if that makes sense. I think that's the word I'm searching for. When you make a sandwich, you can see it. It's not a Dagwood Bumstead classic, This is a standalone because the bun is closed. It doesn't open. If you were to cut the bun open, and why you would want to do this, I don't know why, and put it on there, that's what a sandwich is 2 pieces of bread. This is 1 piece of bread. A hoagie sandwich, or a sub sandwich, that is cut. It's like a French bread or something. You can make it. But a hot dog, I'm wearing my patriotic shirt today because I believe in the hot dog as a separate entity. It's a standalone. It is as American as apple pie. It is not a sandwich. Period. End of discussion. Double D, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, what do you think, Dan? Art thinks a hot dog is its own food group, apparently. So, Dan, what do you think?
I agree with Art 100%. It is not a sandwich. I didn't know what the category was, but Art just said it perfectly. It stands on its own. So I agree with him wholeheartedly. It's an essential. That's what I would call it. You must go to the ballpark and you must have a hot dog off the grill. It should be like on your ticket. I agree to buy a hot dog when I walk into the stadium today. I mean, that's how much of a part of baseball. I'm not sure. It's not quite as much with other sports. Would you agree, Art? I mean, it just seems like, okay, you can have it at the other games, but at baseball games, you have to have a hot dog off the grill. I can still smell the grill at Tiger Stadium walking in from the entrance at Michigan and Trumbull. On the first baseline, there was that one grill, small little concession stand. The hot dogs were frying up right on the grill, right from the start. And that's baseball.
Well, Double D, I agree with you, but I can recall many different smells emanating from Tiger Stadium over the years. But but aside from that, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is the essential food. That is what I'm not even going to say true baseball fan. I'm going to say everybody who walks the earth, that walks into any ballpark across the country, the first thing you have to do is have a hot dog. Have a hot dog, because that is it. Look at that. It's beautiful. Look at that thing. That's not a sandwich. My God. That is a standalone food entity. It's its own food group. I love it. The hot dog is the best. God only knows what's in them. And I don't want to know. I don't want to know how the hot dog is made, but it's delicious.
I think we need a Twitter poll on this one. If we can get it going, is the hot dog a sandwich? Yes or no? And if you do think it's a sandwich, I want an explanation as to why. Because I tend to agree with you guys, but I know there are people out there that really argue that it's a sandwich. So I need one of those people to give me a reason, because I don't see it.
Wasted breath. It's not a debate you need to have, because it's just like, make sure it's a really good hot dog. Make sure that's all you care about. Is it a really good hot dog? Don't boil them all the time. Come on, let's get it off the grill. Let's do it right.
Agreed. We all better be doing that this weekend. We're going to get some good weather for Memorial Day, and we're going to get some grilled hot dogs for sure. And all this talk of food is making everybody hungry, but I think we can agree on this. There's no way that pizza can be a sandwich. And thank you to our friends at Little Caesars for delivering us the mailbag this week and every week here on the Word on Woodward. Little Caesars actually proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, and toasted Parmesan and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. You guys, we've had such a great show so far, but believe it or not, we've still got a lot of great stuff coming up for you. We're going to talk to prospect Giovanni Smith, and we're going to hear from John Morosi from MLB Network later in the show. Right now, we're going to get into Bet You Didn't Know, presented by our friends at Motor City Casino Hotel. And we're going to bring in Carly for this one. And Dan, I forgot to thank you for joining us. So Dan, if you're still listening, thank you so much for being here for the mailbag. Always great. I hope you have a great hot dog this weekend as well. Carly, what do you think? Is a hot dog a sandwich?
A hot dog is its own thing. It's just a hot dog. It's not a sandwich.
Yeah, agree.
A peanut butter jelly sandwich, a ham sandwich, an egg sandwich, whatever you want to eat. Just don't call a hot dog a sandwich. I know I can see Art drooling right now. He so badly wants a hot dog.
Yeah. I want to ask you both this. Okay, now we know we've already decided a hot dog is not a sandwich. Would you use, because I'm thinking now, I'm either thinking Little Caesars pizza after the show's over or a hot dog. How about, do you think a hot dog could be a pizza item? Would you put hot dog on your pizza?
No.
You put sausage on there. I know that's different, but I mean, maybe you should try it. A coney dog pizza, Art.
Yeah. Just cut it up, put the hot dog, and put it on your pizza and let us know.
I'm just talking about like a standard, like what's the most popular pizza in America? You'd have to say cheese and pepperoni, right? Instead of pepperoni. Great point by Daniela here. She's on fire today. So what do is that you cut up a hot, call up Little Caesars. Hey, yeah, I know you hot and ready. I got a special request. How about instead of pepperoni, can you cut up a hot dog and put it on? I want not a cheese and hot dog pizza, not a cheese and pepperoni. I think that would be a big seller.
Art, I'm gonna let you handle that one. Why don't you team up with Little Caesars?
I can't
come out with the Art hot and ready.
Really, I'm calling them right now. Yeah, give me the marketing department. I've got a great idea. I'm sure they get calls like that all the time.
All right, you guys. A hot dog is not a sandwich. Moral of the story. All right. And if you do think it, like I said, drop a comment or something to explain your side, because I don't see it. So let's move on now, you guys. We're going to kind of do a this day in history, but we're going to look at tomorrow, because May 22nd is a big day in Red Wings history. So Art, I want you to kick this one off. May 22nd, 1997.
Well, one of the moves the Red Wings made to start the 96-97 season is they traded away very popular defenseman Steve Chason for Mike Vernon, who had won a Stanley Cup in Calgary as a member of the Flames and was a Calgary native. Now, Mike came in, and he didn't have a bad regular season. He really didn't. He was 13-11 with 8 ties. His save percentage probably could have been better, .899. His goals against was 2.43, and he didn't have a shutout. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Chris Osgood, on the other hand, who was his goaltending partner, was 23, 13, and 9. His goals against was 2.21. He had a save percentage of .913, and Ozzy's had 6 shutouts. However, when the playoffs came, and this is why Scotty Bowman is a great coach, he put in Mike Vernon started. And I don't know if it was a huge controversy. Let me just say it was a bit of a surprise. Well, on May 22nd, 1997, in Game 4 against the dreaded Colorado Avalanche, Mike Vernon pitched a shutout, as I like to say. Red Wings won 6-0. They would go on and win that series in 6 games against the Avalanche. Vernon got the Conn Smythe Trophy, and his record was 16-4. His goals against 1.76, his save percentage 927, and he had one shutout. The only shutout he had all year was in the playoffs in Game 4. He saved it for the best time. That happened, my gosh, 23 years ago tomorrow. Does not seem like it was 23 years. So I'll bet you didn't know that. I mean, Verney's record was okay, wasn't great. He had no shutout, but when it was on the line, 16-4 in the playoffs, boom, he got the job done.
Yeah.
Love it. You pulled
Carly,
through.
I know you've got even more to add to that because May 22nd was just a huge day for the Red Wings. So continue.
That is right. And in May 22nd, 2002, the Dominator, Dominic Hasek, became the first goaltender in playoff history to get an OT assist. I mean, a goalie getting an assist. Who would have thunk? In the Red Wings 2-1 win over rival the Colorado Avalanche in Colorado. So even bigger. That was in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. And with that, Fredrik Olsson scored the winning goal at 12 minutes and 44 seconds of overtime. And we all know the Dominator dominated. I keep saying dominated. The rest of the way with three shutouts in the next 6 games as the Wings won the Cup yet again. So an exciting day in Red Wings history, I'd say.
It really is. And we've still got one more to add to this. Believe it or not, you guys both had some great stories. But now we're going to look at May 22nd, 2009, and we're going to talk about Nick Lidstrom, the perfect human. He played in his 228th consecutive playoff game, which set a playoff record for the NHL at the time. Nick Lidstrom, he won 4 Stanley Cups with the Red Wings during his time here. So it didn't really surprise me too much that he set a record for playing in that many consecutive playoff games. We all know that 2009 didn't really end where we wanted it to end, but it was such a great run. And Nick Lidstrom, you can't say enough about the guy. That almost seems impossible. Art, I kind of want you to comment on this one too, because 228 consecutive playoff games, it just seems crazy.
Well, Steve Yzerman, who is now the overlord of the Red Wings, as we know, will
Did everybody
always
take a
maintain.
shot? Wait.
Crank up!
That's right. Let me begin again. Steve Yzerman, who's now the current general manager of the Red Wings, he obviously played on those teams and played with Nick Lidstrom. He always says that when the Red Wings became a great team was the day that Nick walked into the locker room along with Vladdy, and Steve also gives props, Steve Yzerman that is, also gives props to Sergei Fedorov, but Nick was the guy, who came in, and I can remember, we talked about the that 97 playoff. There was a game, the Red Wings lost that first game to Colorado, out in Colorado, 2-1. And the whole city was freaking out. And I was freaking out on the radio at Red Wing fans for giving up and not believing on the team. I can still remember it. I was screaming so much that I actually broke blood vessels in my throat. I could taste blood as I was screaming. And so, yeah, it was odd. But my point is, in Game 2 that the Red Wings won in Colorado, perhaps the one single play that propelled the Red Wings to that cup was done by Nick. I don't know who it was, Mike Keener, one of those Avalanche guys, probably Adam Deadmarsh, because he was a Red Wing killer, shot, and, Verney had stopped the puck, but it was rolling, it was behind him, and it was going into the net. Out of nowhere, Nick comes, and before the whole puck crosses the goal line, I think it was on the goal line, Nick just swatted that puck away, just batted that baby away. So I was today. Because my heart's not today, MFer. My heart stopped because I figured, oh no, they're going to tie it. Playoffs momentum could switch. Boom, Nick was there, which was the precursor, I think, to how great a player, how great a captain we have a tendency to forget Nick actually was. But I've always said Bobby Orr was the best player I've ever seen in my life. I was a little boy, and when you're little, the players that you see really stick with you because all you have to do is just like maybe go to school and hang out and watch sports, or at least for me. So I love Bobby Orr. But I'm going to tell you, if Bobby Orr is 1A as far as the best defenseman of all time, then Nick is 1B. I mean, he is right up there. I mean, the effortless way that he played the game is amazing. And also and then 2002, his shot from center ice against Stan Kluche of Vancouver, out in Vancouver at GM Place. Kluche was never the same goalie, but that propelled the Red Wings, who were down 2-0 to the Vancouver Canucks in that series. Detroit lost the first 2 games at home. So if you look at individual moments in Red Wing history or turning points in a playoff series, Nick Lidstrom is the guy. He's right there, and with much, I still want to, say, hey, Steve Yzerman did a great job, obviously. Sergei was a money player, obviously. Steve Yzerman, I don't know if I mentioned him, was a money player. Brendan had his moments, the Rein line. I mean, they were a team. They all came through. They all came through in individual places, but Nick is definitely the man, along with Steve Yzerman.
I was waiting for
All
it.
right. Well, now that our audience has probably drank too much, we're going to move on. Celebrate tomorrow because May 22nd, huge day in Red Wing history, and that was Bet You Didn't Know, presented by our friends at Motor City Casino Hotel. Thank you guys for presenting Bet You Didn't Know this week and every week here on The Word on Woodward. Carly, I want to check in with you regarding our social media channels. As always, you are on all of them all week long, finding all the interesting stuff. Why don't you tell us what you found for this week?
Will do. Okay, and I'll start with the Detroit Tigers. They posted today that they have teamed up with Miller Lite to donate to the Detroit chapter of the U.S. Bartenders Guild, and you have a chance to contribute, and you guys don't even have to pay anything. Listen to this. All you need to do is retweet the Tigers Twitter post, and the club will donate 75 cents to the USBG up to $12,500. Then this comes today on National Waitstaff Day. So those are essential workers during this time as well. And what a great way to give back by the Detroit Tigers. And then on the Red Wing side, also on Twitter, this is really fun. The Wings are checking out fans' Photoshop skills, giving them a cutout of Tyler Bertuzzi. So I think we have a lot of pictures of those. You guys have really hit it out of the park. And I saw a couple people put him in every situation, from Tiger King with Joe Exotic standing on the car, and then Bertuzzi's kind of on the back. That one was hilarious. He was hopping on a train, and then I think he was on the Comerica Park Tiger statue. I mean, they were hilarious. So head over to Twitter, the Detroit Red Wings Twitter, to check them out. He was also in the hospital fist bumping nurses, which was really cool. They were very impressive. So I want you guys to keep those coming again on Red Wings Twitter and show off your Photoshop skills. But I will see you guys later in the show for the rest of the social posts that I have found around the social media world.
Thank you, Carly. And if we get a hold of those Tyler Bertuzzi pictures, we'll have to take a look at them when you join us later in the show. Thank you so much. And as always, Carly is on all of our social media channels. So if you have any questions for us, make sure you're dropping them in the comments. Carly will find them, and we will do our best to answer them later in the show. Right now, guys, Art and I are going to talk to one of the Red Wings prospects. Let's get into Downtown Hockey Town, presented by Labatt Blue Light. And today's guest is Giovanni Smith, Red Wings prospect and current Grand Rapids Griffin. Giovanni, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Where are you right now? How are you hanging in there during this quarantine period?
Right now, I'm in Toronto, Ontario.
Awesome. Got to go back for a little bit there. I guess that could be a positive of this whole quarantine thing. To kick this interview off, though, I want to ask you about your season. It was a big season for you. You made your NHL debut back in October and spent some time in both Detroit and Grand Rapids. And it seems like you really made huge strides in your career this season compared to last. What do you think the difference was for you?
The difference for me this year was, my summer. Let's start leading up to this whole season. I had my first year. It was kind of, just getting the whole grip of pro hockey and seeing what it's like and playing and getting the feel of it and going through all these learning process and steps, and then carrying that into the summertime when I was training in Detroit for a majority of the whole summer to get better and hopefully, improve on little areas of my game that could help me be a better player and a better Detroit Red Wings player. So just small steps like that. And then as the season went on, I was just excited to get going, and it worked out well for me.
Giovanni, I know that you're back in Toronto, as you said, with your brother Jamel, who's part of the Tampa Bay Lightning system, and you're living together and you're quarantined together. I have to ask you, a little bit of brotherly roughhousing going on. What happened to your teeth? Did Jamal just give you an elbow or something?
Yeah, actually, we were on the ice today, and he slashed me in the teeth and knocked it out. So that's why I'm missing my teeth right now. But bear with me here for now.
Really? That's a whole new meaning for brotherly love. I'll tell you that. I mean, my gosh. But that's cool. I know you're really tight with him. How has it been? I mean, being in quarantine, it's a unique situation. You're living with another professional hockey player. Has that really helped you not only cope with not going crazy because you're all by yourself, but somebody who can really relate to what you're going through?
Yeah, it's nice. I got Jamel here. We're really close, and it's nice that we can always just battle each other what we do and like workouts and stuff and training. So it's nice in that aspect. And then we're not too far from our actual home. So we just go back home, see my other brothers and my mom, my little brother.
The Griffins could have made a run at the playoffs. Unfortunately, the AHL season was officially canceled just last week, I believe that was. You'd be playing games right now, and you hopefully would be in the playoffs. Do you think missing those games and missing the opportunity at that playoff run is a setback for you personally?
Yeah, it does. It does have a sour taste in my mouth. End the season without having that, that final push or, that extra push at the end of the season, because you look forward to that so much. Personally, I do. And to end the season this way, it's kind of like, like what's going on here? It's a little bit weird, but at the same time, like it is what it is. I'm not the only person in my position right now.
So are you expecting if the Red Wings do come back and finish out the 11 games, you could, I think everyone's under the impression they're going to expand the roster. If they expand the roster, you expect that you're going to be part of that expanded roster, don't you?
Yeah, I'm training now just in case if, things do happen and the league comes back, Detroit Red Wings come back, I'll be playing. I'm getting ready for that.
Actually, in your blog series that you do with Art Taking Flight, in your most recent post, you talked about the exit meetings that you had with both Detroit and in Grand Rapids head coach Ben Simon. In Detroit, you met with some of the front office staff, and you talked specifically about how you think you need to be more consistent physically, and that's kind of what you took away from your talks with Detroit. What do you think it is specifically that you need to work on as a player to kind of improve that physical consistency?
To improve that physical consistency, I think it's just, getting my legs going early on in the game, not just letting the game come to me, just attacking the game head on and engaging myself into the game right away. Just, one, to get myself physically engaged and mentally engaged. And when I do those things, the game kind of just comes to me in a better way.
Giovanni, I know you've always believed in yourself, but I want to go back to your junior career. I mean, you played with Barrie and Guelph. I mean, they're OHL teams. That's what I can say about them. But then you were traded to Kitchener, and you had a great playoff run where you had 18 points in 18 playoff games, including 11 goals. Was that the moment where it started to click in? You were just searching for that opportunity to show what you can really do, and no better way, because when I think of you, I think of a playoff performer, actually. You had a good playoff run, even though it was short last year in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I really look forward to playoffs. It's a total different ballgame in playoffs. Guys, they feel different, they play different, they look different in playoffs. And to me personally, playoffs kind of fits my style of game. And we, like you said, we had that run going to Kitchener. And that team, we made a couple of trades towards the end of the year to go for a run. We had guys, I was playing with Logan Brown, Logan Stanley, a couple ex-teammates, and we're all the same age, good players, good friends, and we just had fun with it.
I know the Red Wings were really impressed with that too, though. I mean, I can remember them going to watch you play in Kitchener, and they were so excited for you because they thought it was a great opportunity for you to finally, again, I'm not going to knock the other OHL teams you played for, but it was a great opportunity for you. I would assume you felt the same way.
Yeah, actually, like, for my career too, it It was perfect. A good market. It was a great place to play. Good head coach. It was just nice to be put on that platform to play hockey, play big games that really mattered. Allowed us young 18-year-old kids to showcase our skills every night.
Giovanni, you mentioned that you were kind of preparing for the event that the Red Wings season does resume, and hopefully you could be on that expanded roster moving forward. How are you actually preparing? Are you able to skate, or what kind of workout regimen are you on?
So far, I've been doing. I'm lucky. Luckily, I have a gym close by that's open for us, and it's just a few people right now in the gym, and we just got some ice, so it's things are starting to progress now. I just skated today, and it was nice to be back on the ice.
Giovanni, I want to tell you that there's a certain Red Wing official who loves your work ethic, and I know that you train like a fiend during the summer. I mean, and you've done that for years. You come to Detroit, and you work out here. But I want to go back to October 25th, your NHL debut. And what was that like? Because I know from the blog series, your goal was to get called up this season by the Red Wings, and it happened maybe even a little bit earlier than you felt. I mean, so it's the 24th. You're in your hotel room in Detroit. The next day, the Red Wings are going to take on the Sabres at Little Caesars Arena. What's going through your mind at that point?
At that point, it was, I've dreamt about this moment for so long. At that point, it's just like, okay, I've envisioned this in my mind. I know I want the game to go. Like I've already seen what's going to happen, how I should play. And I kind of just let all the nerves just leave my body. I just want to go out there and just play my game. Who cares on what people think about me, or my fans or the other team, or even the coaches. I just want to go out there and play my solid game, and hopefully it works the best for myself.
Giovanni's going to know where I'm going with this. I want to go back. I believe it was November 14th. You're playing the LA Kings. And I love Drew Doughty. I mean, I do. I think he's a great player. Yet somehow you, a raw rookie, barely 21 maybe at the most, got under his skin. Was that the most gratifying moment in your early career, where you can take a superstar player like Doughty and know that he's more concentrated on you than he is the game?
Yeah, that's it, in the back of my mind. Yeah, it was kind of like, okay, Drew Doughty can, talk to me a little bit, worry about me, what's going on. That's a win for me, and that's just how I like to play my game. I like to throw guys off a little bit, kind of get in their ears, and just get them thinking about not so the next play, but what's going to happen, like what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do on the ice. And just doing that right there kind of just, creates an extra second or an extra little time on the ice to do something or to open up space on the ice. And I've been doing that for quite some time.
Giovanni, I was just going to follow up with that and ask you, did you feel confident out there during the games that you did play with the Red Wings? Did you feel like you fit in well? I mean, it's a pretty big step up from playing in the AHL, so I'm just wondering how you felt the adjustment to the game was.
Yes, I did feel pretty confident. I felt like, I belonged here in a sense. I was just happy to be back skating on that ice in Little Caesars Arena and just playing hockey. It's like, at the end of the day, hockey's hockey to me, and it doesn't matter where I'm playing, as long as I'm having fun, getting the job done, skating my hardest and working my hardest, and that's all I can ask for, really.
How gratifying was this year for you? I mean, it's a lot of hard work. It really paid off for you. You were able to be in 21 games for the Red Wings. If they come back, hopefully you're going to get into some more. But I would imagine everything that you've gone through on and off the ice is worth it, because you're in a very, very good position to be a Red Wing for a long time.
Thank you. It does feel good. I got to say it. I've been working pretty hard. It's always been one of my goals to be a Red Wing. And it's just little steps by steps to get there. And I realized that. So I took this year as a big step, did some self-reflecting. Hopefully, obviously I want to keep going up, but it doesn't stop at that. There's more things I want to achieve and I want to improve on. and to be a better player.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Giovanni. We hope that you are back out on the ice as soon as possible. I know it's got to be hard staying inside and not playing hockey, but hey, we're missing it too. So we hope you're back soon. And like I said, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Downtown Hockey Town is brought to you by Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light. Thanks again to Giovanni Smith, one of the hardest workers, really hoping to see him in a Red Wings uniform really soon here. Art, I'm going to toss this one right over to you. Why don't you get into our headliner?
All right, thank you very much there, Danielle. It is time for the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, and let's bring in from the MLB Network, a jack of all trades, really, and a master of all, I say. That, of course, is J.P. Morosi, John Paul Morosi, John Morosi. The guy he's that popular. He has a variety of names. But, J.P., great to have you back on the headliner. Really appreciate it. My first question to you is that when we had you on the last time, it was in, the COVID-19 was raging. I think we've kind of hit the curve and flattened the curve a little bit now, which is good. But your wife is a doctor out in the Ann Arbor area. How is she holding up? How's she doing? How are you holding up being Mr. Mom?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show today and for the kind words, most importantly, for my wife. She's doing great. She'll be back at work tomorrow and really day by day for us. There are two different kinds of days here. The days when Alexis is at the hospital working and when she's home. And so we have different routines a little bit. The kids have been doing great, really enjoying the time as a father to be with them. Getting a little bit better in terms of my duties in the kitchen, I would say, steadily. I'm not ready to open a restaurant quite yet, but we're getting a little bit better as the days go along. And I think overall, just to be with the girls and have that perspective, they understand what their mom is doing as much as possible for a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, as the two oldest ones do. And then we have a 2-year-old as well, certainly. So it's been a lot of commotion around the house, but it's been great. That beautiful noise of having 3 kids running around, and now, of course, being able to get outside more often. So I will hope, Art, that during our conversation that the girls follow my hoped-for instructions to let Dad talk with Mr. Regner here on the air and to have that conversation. But in general, Art, it's been great, and we thank you so much for the support of everybody that really has rallied around our incredible healthcare workers, not just my wife, but all the nurses, all the doctors, all the first responders, EMTs, people at the grocery stores as well that are helping our community and our state move forward every day.
Well, we have had this discussion today, and I might as well bring you in since you now are talking about your enhanced culinary skills. Is a hot dog a sandwich or not?
I heard that conversation earlier, and I have been reflecting on it a lot, actually, the last several moments. I believe, Art, a hot dog is an entity unto itself. It is not a sandwich. It is its own genre of sports and outdoor grilling food. And may we all be enjoying our hot dogs here on Memorial Day weekend, while also certainly reflecting on the true meaning of the holiday on Monday as well.
Well, yeah, certainly with it being Memorial Day. Very, very well said. Let's move on to where when you think hot dogs, you think baseball. Who doesn't think baseball? At least I do. And yeah, I know the proposal, the 67-page proposal, which was made public, I guess, last week, was given to the players. Where do you think we are right now as far as getting this game, about getting the players back on the diamond?
Well, Art, to me, the next 10 days or so are very important. And I think all along in these negotiations between MLB and the union, the effective deadline, it's not a firm one, but it's around the first part of June, because to begin play in July with regular season games, you have to have spring training occurring sometime in the month of June. And for that to occur, you probably have to have an agreement sometime in the early part of June. So we are approaching what I would describe as a pretty important 10-day to 2-week time frame. I do believe at the end of the day, Art, that I would hope an agreement could come into play and be realized in a relatively short amount of time, because there is the understanding of the overall economic parameters of the game. I understand and certainly appreciate the desire of the owners to have that 50-50 split of revenues. It makes intuitive sense to me, in part because the portion of the season that really drives so much of the revenue of baseball is the postseason. And when you consider what a lot of public health experts have said in recent weeks, the postseason, deeper into the fall, of course, is the portion of the baseball season that is maybe most in jeopardy of a second spike of COVID-19 cases. So I fully understand the logic there that MLB would want to know what exactly the pie is before it is then divvied up 50-50 between the owners and the players.
Yeah, as much as I think we would all like to see fans, as much as fans would like to see these games, at least early on or in the very beginning, it's going to be played without fans. And I know that there have been a few sporting events around the world that haven't had fans, but I know back on April 29th, 2015, because of what was transpiring in Baltimore, a little bit of civic unrest, you actually covered a game where there was no fans. What was that like?
I was there, Art. It was really certainly a unique circumstance for the game. And obviously, as you mentioned, a tragic time for the city of Baltimore following the death of Freddie Gray. Once the game began, certainly the sounds of the ballpark were not normal. And that stood out to me, the quiet. But to the players on the field, once you begin competing, I think major league players and professional athletes are so well trained and they're such outstanding performers in their own area that to them, it's not really significant if the stands are full or empty. And certainly they get that extra emotional boost of when they're full. And I've watched the games certainly from Korea and the KBO and over the weekend in the Bundesliga, the German soccer league, where there were no fans there. It's certainly different. But when you're there and in the moment and the game begins, the players, I believe, are competing just as hard as they ever would. And we will see as time moves forward. I thought some very unique tributes made to the fans over the weekend. For example, in the Bundesliga, Borussia Dortmund plays in a very famous venue in Dortmund, Germany, which has one of the great fan atmospheres in the world, really, in all of sports, with what's called the yellow wall. All the supporters sit at one end of the field, and they're all wearing the yellow of the team. And the players, after the game was over, they won. They beat their rival Schalke 4-0. They walked over towards where the yellow wall would be and applauded to the empty stands, as if to acknowledge the fans that would have been there otherwise. I think there was only one usher standing there, a security guard that was in that whole area. Normally it would be full and raucous. You can imagine Cameron Indoor Stadium over a 70,000 seat stadium. That's what they have there. And so instead it was silent. But I thought it was a very somber and yet appropriate way to honor the fans who, while they were not there physically, were certainly there in spirit.
Right, we're all in this together, and they were thinking about him. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's absolutely tremendous. I don't know, JP, you've covered a lot of events, and so have I over the years, live sporting events, and especially when I'm down on the field, like at Michigan Stadium or something for a football game, I tune out that there's even 100,000 people around me. I'm so focused in, not that I'm an athlete, far from it, but I am so focused in on what's going on. So I'm pretty sure that, as you just said, it's pretty easy, fans or no fans, and I'm not knocking the fans either, that they have a job to do. They're professional athletes for a reason. And one of the reasons is that their concentration level, their compete level is so high that they tune out everything except the task at hand.
Very good point. And we've all attended, certainly in baseball, Art, maybe extra inning games that are delayed by rain. I remember a couple at Comerica Park that I've seen over the years where by the end of the game, you may have several hundred fans in the stands because it's 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. I remember Carlos Guillen's walk-off home run against the Yankees, which I think was at 3 a.m. that day after the long rain delay. I believe that game started. First pitch time was 11 o'clock, if I remember correctly, back in 2007, an amazing night of baseball at Comerica. But we've all seen games like that where because of the elements or the circumstances, the crowd is pretty sparse at the end. And so I think players will simply go into that mode. It will be their new normal. And part of it, to me, Art, is just there is such a gratitude now for anybody involved in sports, anybody involved in being able to compete again, to be part of a community again. We've heard that sentiment expressed from players, American-born players, certainly who are playing in Korea now or in Taiwan. I know that's been the case for the players that are in Germany now playing soccer. We will see as the weeks go along. Hopefully more and more leagues have that same experience. But there's such an appreciation. I know even today the announcement from the governor about being able to have in certain areas gatherings of up to 10 people, things that we would have taken for granted for so many years and not even given a second thought to, now, when done safely, is a really big deal for everybody. So I think, Art, that we're at a time of appreciation. And playing sports and getting back to that will be part of that as well.
Yeah, we have to jump all over the place because I really wanted to get into a little bit your thoughts on Miguel Cabrera's generous donation to the city of Detroit, $250,000. I know you're into it, so I'm going to speak for you, JP, because I promised you I wanted to get into a little hockey talk. I wanted to get into a little Red Wing talk, and unfortunately, we have limited time. From talking to you, you don't think maybe the Red Wings are quite as far away as becoming a playoff team as maybe we think. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. To me, Art, I think it's all about the defense and how quickly this young core of defensemen can mature and really be able to help out what is certainly still a fluid goaltending situation too. And obviously, maybe the Wings will go into the free agent market for a goaltender this summer. Maybe Markstrom is a name to watch. Maybe Jaro Halak. I could see him being a nice fit for the Wings as well as a partner to Bernier. But to me, so much of the recent game in the NHL has been revolving around mobile, strong defense cores. And offensively, certainly you want to get your points on the power play as best you can. Maybe you have one dominant forward line that can help you score. But I'm watching so much the development of Seider, Hronek as well, what he can do. Maybe they pick up one more defenseman in free agency this summer. Maybe a Brody could be one possibility. Tyson Barrie, maybe someone in that class of player to really round out that group. Because I think you look at the great Wings teams, developing a defenseman, I think, is so important. They did it, of course, with Lidstrom and going back all those years. But we talked even a bit before off air about how close the Wings were even to making a legitimate cup run in 2013. They had the Blackhawks down that year, 3-1 in the series, but they were short basically one defenseman. DeKaiser got hurt that year, I remember, in the spring, and they weren't quite able to keep up. If you have the right mix of mobile defensive cores, I think back to the Blues last summer and what an amazing group they had there. Colton Parayko coming, I think, to be one of the best 5'10" defensemen in the whole league.
Oh, yeah.
We saw that last summer during the course of the playoffs. So I think when you get that kind of player, you maybe got a top 1, 2, or 3 defenseman insider coming up, Chalowski as well, Hronek. If you find the right veteran defenseman to blend in with that group, I really think if maybe not next season, but the one after that, you could really be talking about a team that's going to be a dangerous one to play against in the playoffs.
And then when you go up front, I mean, I think the Red Wings now have a definitive number one line. Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Mantha, and, of course, Dylan Larkin. When you have a number one line, and Jeff Blashill has talked about this, it kind of makes it easier. Things start to kind of work itself out, and you have a definitive plan where it's an umbrella effect. You kind of slot from the top all the way down to the bottom. And really, that's a good, young first line for the Red Wings.
You're exactly right, Art. I think you look at the Wings' point scoring overall. I think the top 6 players they had in point scoring this year are all 25 and younger. That's a big deal. That's really important that you've got enough players now already at the National Hockey League level that have shown themselves to be quality National Hockey League forwards. And you can say to yourself, when you think about Larkin and Mantha and Bertuzzi and certainly some others, yes, you believe they're going to be on the next playoff team for the Red Wings, no question about it, and have a very defined role. What I'll be curious to see is how much depth you can surround those players with such that you allow them to get the right amount of ice time where you're not maybe taxing them too much in all specialty team situations, but you can play them when you need to in the power play, certainly killing penalties as well. It can be a part of their game too. But I think that really flows into how much you have to go to that well with your key guys during the course of the year and have that supplemental scoring. But that's really what separates to me, Art, the teams that make the playoffs from those that advance, because they're going to have to go up against these great elite defensemen during the course of the playoff series. And that's where the secondary scoring that we saw on so many of the great Red Wings teams was so important to their success.
JP, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you this. When I came up through the ranks, we always heard that, your best coaches at the professional level and even your managers, general managers or whatever, were not really, really good players. Steve Yzerman has stepped in. We all know he was a great player. And what he did in Tampa as a general manager was pretty astute too and astounding. And then picking Mo Seider last year, 6 overall, which seemed to come out of nowhere by a lot of people. How would you assess Yzerman, not as a player, because we know how great he was, but Yzerman as an executive?
He's been sensational. And I think you look at what the Lightning did during his time there. They had the classic players to build around. Obviously, when you think about Stamkos and Hedman, really elite Hall of Fame caliber players. But then it was a lot of great moves that Steve made around the margins to build the depth on that roster. And I think to also convince players who maybe weren't so sure about it to play in Tampa as free agents. And then the winning starts to sell itself, as it will in Detroit again. We know certainly what a great hockey town Detroit is. Detroit is hockey town. And players that are now free agents and coming into the league grew up watching Steve play and grew up watching Datsuk and Zetterberg and Lidstrom and all the greats during that time. And so they've got now that connection that when the wings start to click again, I believe that you're going to see when Steve Yzerman picks up the phone and calls you as a free agent pitch, you're going to listen pretty carefully. And I know, Art, I think I shared this story with you before. I was at the National Junior Camp going on in Plymouth in December, right before the Wings had a home game that night. There was a scrimmage that the U18s were playing against the junior team, and there was Steve with his brain trust there as well. Cronwall was there, Cleary, Draper may have been there too. Just what a great group of executives were there. And so Steve was even finding time to go over to a scrimmage in Plymouth before a game in Detroit that night. He is doing his homework. He is seeing all the games. And I really think that Wings fans rightly are putting a lot of faith in what he has done in Tampa and what he is doing right now in Detroit.
Well, I couldn't have said it better. People always ask me because, I've known obviously Steve a long time, and they say, well, what's it like now that he's back? And I said, let me put it to you this way. Steve Yzerman, if they're not competing in 4 or 5 years at the most, he's going to die trying, and he's going to take us all with him. I mean, his work ethic is second to none. And I mean, I am not surprised. That's such a great story. That's such a Steve Yzerman story. I mean, he is dedicated. He's competitive. He wants to win. I still think has the highest tolerance for pain of any athlete I've ever covered, and maybe any athlete of all time, everything that he went through. But JP, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. We're definitely going to have you on back. John Paul Morosi of the Major League Baseball Network, MLB Network. Thank you so much. We've been buddies a long time. I always enjoy talking to you, and, give my best to your entire family, especially your wife. She's the real hero in all of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. Really appreciate the sentiments, my friend, and best wishes to everybody for a safe and happy holiday weekend. Certainly remembering as well all those who died serving our country on Monday there on Memorial Day as well.
Very well said. Thank you again, JP. That is the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. So, Danielle, I think you can tell, JP, we a lot of topics we wanted to cover, but it does obviously look like that some way, shape, or form, baseball is hopefully going to be back and relatively soon. Who knows? Maybe a month from now, we're talking about the beginning of the Tiger season. Wouldn't that be great?
You guys talked about that, Art? I thought that you guys were talking about hot dogs again. That's what I took from that. JP also does not think a hot dog is a sandwich. I'm just kidding. That just warms my heart. Double D's one thing, him agreeing with me, but if you can get a guy like JP Morosi, a Harvard grad no less, agreeing with me, then you know what? I think case settled. It's no longer a topic for discussion. A hot dog is not a sandwich. It's set. It's done. But Art, he did have a lot of insight there. It was great to hear his thoughts on the return of Major League Baseball, and also great to hear his positive thoughts about the Red Wings, because you asked him a question that said you might think the Red Wings are closer to being in the playoffs than some of us even think. And, that's a really positive thing to hear from a guy like JP.
Right. It definitely. I mean, he covers both of them. He's a general assignment sports reporter, like almost all of us. When you first get in this business, and you want to cover everything, just because you want to gain the experience, you want to get a feel for not only a baseball locker room, but an NHL locker room, football locker room, NBA locker room. Just how it goes. You want to learn the ropes, I guess. And so so all of us that that are speaking on sports, depending if you're considered to be a veteran, I guess. We've gone in and covered everything, and certainly JP is one of the best.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. He will definitely join us again here on The Word on Woodward. Art, let's get into our Let's Socialize segment. We're going to bring back Carly, and this segment is presented by AAA. It's time to talk some social media, Carly. I know you've been taking some questions from fans, so what do you got for us today?
That's right. Okay, first question is for both of you. Chris Pame wants to know, what is your favorite championship team in Detroit sports history? We'll start with you, Art, and then go to you, Daniela.
All right.
You know, I don't really want to cop out. I mean, because all of them in Detroit mean so much to me. They're all unique. I think the best championship in my life. You're looking great, Carly, by the way. Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
But yeah, hey, you know what? Before I answer this question from Chris, let me just say this. I think I'm not going to go the dry shampoo route anymore. I know that you ladies swear by it, but I'm just not sure. I think I'm just going to have to shower. I showered last night. I put dry shampoo in my hair, and it looks awful. So, but that's just a sidebar.
Well, you're not supposed to shower when you then use dry shampoo, Art.
Yeah. Dry shampoo is for when
you're supposed to use it when it's dirty.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. All right. I'm going to say for me, and again, it's not a cop-out. I think the greatest sports championship for me was when Michigan won in the Rose Bowl. They defeated Washington State and had an undefeated season. And the reason why is because I had never been to the Rose Bowl before. And after it was all over and Greasy won the MVP and Lloyd's out there, I remember walking onto the field. And remember, I grew up, being a Big Ten fan and watching the Rose Bowl and the Rose Parade every single year. I had never been out there. And when I walked out, it was kind of twilight. The lights were up, the field was empty, and I walked out onto the Michigan end zone. And, I thought about my family. I thought about my father, who was still alive back at that point. And, him being such a huge Michigan fan and being raised that and walking out there, to me, it was just so emotional that finally, Michigan had finally pulled it off. I'm at the Rose Bowl, and they had an undefeated football season. Now, granted, they had to share because Philip Fulmer, the coach at Tennessee, was all mad that Woodson won the Heisman that year and not, Peyton Manning, who had a pretty good career too. Both of them are Hall of Famers. Put Michigan fourth, so they had to share that championship with Nebraska, who, I think against Missouri that year had like 5 downs to score, a touchdown that won the game. Anyway, I can go on and on about it, but really, I just think as emotional impact for me, Michigan winning that Rose Bowl and winning the national championship or sharing it back in '97, I guess it was, which was a great year for Detroit sports. I think really that's it.
All right, Daniela, how about you?
Well, I didn't know we were going to go the college route here, but I'm going to give you my Detroit one for sure.
Okay.
So in Detroit, the one that is my absolute favorite is actually the 04 Pistons championship. And the reason behind that is I was a diehard Rip Hamilton fan. I had a jersey.
Yeah.
I even had a face mask, and I would wear it, and I would watch every single game. Back then, okay, so I'm in 04, I'm 10. So I was in 4th grade when this happened, and I told my mom that I had to wear a face mask for every soccer game because Rip Hamilton wore one when he was playing basketball. And that was the first team that I was really attached to and that I watched every single game all the way through. And I was so excited when they won it and very sad that they didn't repeat. So that was definitely my biggest Detroit one. But if you're going to go college, Michigan State, Rose Bowl, again, 2013.
Well, obviously.
That was awesome. That last play of the game, it was great. That whole season was great. So, Art, enough of your Michigan talk.
Well,
yeah, right.
really
I know. I do remember the 2013. All right, you're not allowed to talk Michigan anymore.
I don't mean to interrupt you. No, I'm just going to say, Ann Arbor is considered part of the metropolitan Detroit area. So, I just want to, East Lansing obviously is not.
Okay.
But, Carly, I want to ask you this question. Don't you think for the next show that Daniela to show what kind of player she really is, how intense she is, because she brings it. You and I both know Daniela. There's no messing around with Daniela. She's serious. She should wear her Rip Hamilton mask, right? The whole show next time on Tuesday.
I'm down. But Daniela, it's funny that you said that because I remember I was in 5th grade. I mean, you're older, and I had it in like my AOL bio. You know how you kind of had like your message, so in your on your profile you had a bio, and I had in all caps and like of course like different colors and fonts, like 2004 Pistons champs baby, like in all caps, exclamation points. It's funny. Back when we were young.
Yeah,
right, Art?
That was a great time for us. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
It was. It was.
I think I was
remember being
7
able to
back
stay up
then.
late to watch the game. Oh, got it.
How
Okay,
old
so
were you,
you're
Art?
younger than both of us.
Let's see. Carly was 5. You had to be 4 or something, so I was like 6.
That's how, I don't know. All right, I'm going to have to double check your math. Okay, but going on to the next question. Zach Game wants to know, are there any new hobbies you guys picked up lately? I'm assuming he's asking in quarantine. Again, we'll start with you, Art, and then head on over to Daniela. So any new hobbies, Art?
Drinking pre-mixed margaritas. I've never really tried that before. And I love them. You know, I mean,
what brand?
haven't
Do you have one that you like?
Well, you know, I mean, any brand, as long as it says pre-mix on it, it has actual tequila in it, I'm all for it. But you know, but really, what haven't we tried at this point? I mean, we've been locked up for so long that, you know, I'm going downstairs and looking at stuff that I've packed away for years, like books that I was going to read or something, you know, like the Charles M. Schultz biography, you know, the guy who created Peanuts and Charlie Brown and all that stuff. And what's really interesting when I moved, I put the book away. I recently found it, and I was about a quarter of a way in, and I picked it up. And it's like I picked it up yesterday. I retained everything from that book. So I think probably what I really try to do is go back and try to catch up on some reading of books that I really wanted to read in my life.
Okay, so this turned into what you want to do, not what you have done in quarantine.
Well, I kind of did. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess. A lot of stuff. Maybe it is the margarita mix. I guess I'm going to have to go with that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, Daniela, do you have anything impressive?
Well, okay, I don't want anyone to judge me on this because I used to be a pretty big reader, but then, you know, I just got older, started working and everything. I've kind of stopped reading. So I have read a couple of books during quarantine. I'm in the middle of my second one right now. So that has been that's been good. I'm glad that I got to pick that back up. And the other thing I've been doing is rollerblading. I got myself a new pair of rollerblades, and I've been going to all the trails around my house and paths. And so hey, 2 different things for me, and that has been fun.
Love it. Well, I see you reading and getting your exercise in. Okay, and then we have the third question and final question. Art, this is a hard question. I wanted to put you on the spot. Michael Sport wants to know, what is the blade height set at for mowing the grass at Comerica Park, that is?
Wow. You know what? I would say, well, let's put it this way. Depending on, you know, I will say this. If the Tigers are a slow team,
you know,
then the grass is high in the infield because you want the ball to slow down. Because you know they're slow, so you don't want them to be out, you know. But if they're a fast team and guys that can, you know, stretch singles into doubles, you want a short field so the ball just skips right out of there. Before you know, it's like boom, the ball is out, it's gone. So I think it all depends on the kind of team that the Tigers have. But I really don't know. I think Michael may know this, but I would say probably it's not very high. It's just not very high.
Got it. Okay. Well, maybe the logic sounds about right, Art. But if you guys want to know the real answers and to find out more about the grass at Comerica, make sure to check out The Dirt presented by Carhartt on Tiger's social media channels. Okay. And then now we're going to shift gears, and I want to highlight a Twitter post. It was a very sweet story. Buck Farmer and his wife, Kayla, highlighted a few adoptable puppies at the Michigan Humane Society, and I'm happy to report that the dogs were adopted. I mean, what an incredible time to get a puppy. I'm still working on trying to get a dog myself, but what an amazing story. Look at those sweet faces. That's awesome that the Farmer family did that. And again, happy to report that they've been adopted. Art, I mean, any new cats in the Regner household?
No. I mean, I'll tell you that George Farmer, boy, what a guy. I mean, not only is he, his wife is expecting a child, I believe, but he's going to bring some puppies into the whole mix. I mean, maybe his middle name is Noah or something. I don't know. I mean, it's just adding animals and family members and everything.
He didn't adopt
It's
them.
a baby, Art.
He didn't adopt them. He highlighted them.
Oh,
he was trying to get other people to adopt the puppies. Let me make sure I said that correctly.
Right.
It's not like he has like 5 dogs. A baby's coming soon.
Hey, I am sorry because this show's almost over. I've got hot dogs on the mind, and now margarita mix. So let's.
Yeah, there you go. Start the long weekend early.
Well, thank you,
definitely.
Carly and Art. We're gonna try to get you to those hot dogs and margaritas. So, Carly, thank you so much. Great as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you to
it.
our friends at AAA as well. AAA says thank you with free roadside assistance for first responders and healthcare workers fighting to defeat COVID-19. You protect us by going to work every day. Let AAA protect you on the way there and back. All right. It's the end of the show today, and did we have fun today? We had a lot of fun today.
Yeah, today was great. All the guests were fantastic. It was just a lot of fun. Highlighted obviously by Miguel Cabrera and his generous donation of $250,000 to the city of Detroit, to the kids of Detroit. Just a great day all around.
And thank you all for tuning in. As always, make sure you're tuning in every Tuesday and Thursday starting at noon. And I got to remind you, as soon as we sign off here, head over to the District Detroit mobile app. Make sure you play Hockeytown Trivia. Today's theme is music, and Art said he's going to be playing. He might not be under the name Art Regner, but he's going to be playing. And I think you should too. It's a lot of fun. Again, District Detroit mobile app. You'll see the Hockeytown Trivia banner. Just click that. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.